Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you could make it today to the Sage Integrative Health Ask the Practitioner. I'm Dr. Wendy Romig. This is Dr. Beba. Dr. Beba, would you like to give a quick introduction for those who don't know you?
Hi, I'm one of the doctors of clinical nutrition at Sage Integrative Health. I work with Dr. Romig and we work on a variety of conditions and I see some of my patients here. Welcome everybody.
Great, thank you. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Wendy Romig. I'm the owner and clinical director here at Sage Integrative Health. I've had the clinic for going on, 15 years now. As some of you may know, we are a fully virtual model now, which is really exciting because we're actually able to help people all over the country and in Canada. We do everything via Zoom, and it's been working out really great and helping our patients have that easy access from the comfort of your home. So again, thank you for joining us. Today's Ask the Practitioner session, we're leaving it up to some of you to check in. I see some questions are rolling in already. One of the things about uh, what we do here at Sage Integrative Health is we do operate in the area of functional medicine. And functional medicine is an area that very much gets into diving into the root cause. Something that Dr. Babe and I are both very passionate about is we don't want to, the diagnosis is important, but what we really want to know is why. How did someone get to that place in their body and in their health status that cause these things to manifest in the first place? So without further ado, I see some questions rolling in, and we have some topics to hit off on today. But since this is the Ask the Practitioner, we will ask that you just stay muted for the benefit of just sound quality for today, and just put your questions in the chat box. We will be sure to get to them as they come in order. So one of the questions that we have coming in today is, why is drinking water so important? Dr. Babe, and maybe you want to tee us off with a good one for winter, especially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, water is important in so many ways. If you think of the body as a mechanical device, like, to clean the pipes, we have to, make sure that everything is moving smoothly. So it's good for our blood pressure, good for our detoxification pathways, good for our kidneys. So without actually having adequate water in the system, or minerals in the system, then we would have lots of issues that impacts our immunity, headaches, digestive issues, constipation. So water is definitely extremely important.
It is. And actually, people don't even realize in the winter, people forget the importance of water. But what happens in the winter is we're in this super dry environment, right? The heat's on for most of us, and at least in the cooler climates, we have our heat on for several months out of the year. We're probably not getting outside as much, although I'm a big cold weather fan, so I'm outside pretty frequently in the winter. But most of us aren't getting out the same amount as we are in the spring and summer. And we're in these very heated, dry environments, which can become very dehydrating for our body. Hence the proliferation of cold and flu season. And so when we see the water is such a critical component of that, water is actually helping to flush the mucous membranes, keeping the sinuses moist, keeping our throats moist. When you're in an enclosed environment, even if you have an air filter, when you're in this enclosed environment and you're very dry, your skin might even get dry, you're very dry, think about the stickiness of the mucous membranes and how that can become very problematic. Now you have these germs just zipping around in this very enclosed environment, and it's going to just create it's going to be adhere to our mucous membranes a lot more easily, and then cause us to have these rampant things flying around with, stomach virus, stomach flu, the colds, coronavirus, COVID-19. So we're seeing a lot of these things, especially in the winter, because people are spending a little too much time indoors, and B, not hydrating as well. So it is the immune system, but water is so critical to our immune function, just keeping our like I said, our mucous membranes more moist, so things aren't just sticking into our body and just adhering and wreaking havoc. So My recommendation for winter is get outside every single day. I don't care how cold it is. Bundle up, go outside, get some fresh air, and also drink lots of water, room temperature preferably. So, anything you want to add to that?
No, I love those recommendations. Like, going outside is something that I need to do more. This is something like, this year I'm trying more, but water is like, super important. And especially another thing is like, make sure that you are getting the water. I love one of the good tests is like, when you go to the bathroom and like, the basics, if you see your pee in a darker color, yes,
Mhm.
you are definitely dehydrated. And it should be like light straw color. We don't want it to be like no color at all, but like light straw color is totally fine. And also assess how your body is getting all those minerals from the water. And especially some of us for health purposes are getting all those filtered waters, and if you're not getting enough minerals in the system, then you would have more health consequence. So it's really important to like get your minerals, whether it's a little bit of pinch of salt in the water
Yeah.
or some mineral water, or like having some coconut water, like just get your minerals through your water as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Those minerals are critical. Another good question that came in, why do cruciferous vegetables cause gas? Yeah, this is a common one, and it's something that I think a lot of people face. You know, you have some cauliflower or cabbage, you might start getting a little bit bloated. And you know, you've got in all most cruciferous vegetables, you have those sulfur containing compounds. And the body just doesn't always break those down as well. And sulfur, as we know, is can be a little noxious, but it can cause gas as well. Plus, you have some of those fibers, those you know, those not resistant starches, but they're the insoluble fibers that are in our dark leafy greens like kale and collards and chard, and also in broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage. They're harder to break down for the gut. So your body's trying and working on it. You know, the microbiome's really working on it. When the microbiome's working hard to break something down, it means there's a lot of production happening, which results in gas.
I actually explain it as like, when you have a little one, and then that little one needs to get used to different foods. The same thing with
Yeah.
our microbiome. Sometimes we are not used to higher amounts of those foods. So it might be a good idea to train our bacteria, like, with like easier to digest ones, and then like, gradually increase the amounts that we can tolerate. And everybody is different. Everybody's bacterial composition is different, what we can tolerate, our background, our underlying diseases could be different. That is why your friend could be having those like cruciferous veggies, but you might be not tolerating them as well, and there could be also underlying issues that we need to address first before we introduce those to your diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you brought up a really excellent point about why does one person, you know, eat something and they're fine, and another person can have the exact same meal and completely just blow up, feel terrible afterwards. And a lot of it just does have to do with our microbiome and our body's ability to break foods down. So acidity in the stomach is a huge component. I always say it starts even further than that. Like maybe someone's eating really fast, the same meal of just inhaling their food. So their body is not breaking it down as well, which can cause a lot of gassiness. But then someone might not have as much stomach acid. And that's a huge component. Stomach acid helps break those foods down more efficiently so that by the time they're getting into the small intestines, into the large intestines, they're more properly broken down and not creating as much food for the microbiome to really feed off of. So, and when you have a good balance in your microbiome, you should be able to tolerate these foods. So, and this is where everyone's microbiome is different. It's like a fingerprint.
Mhm.
It's everyone has a unique microbiome. And some people, if they've been eating a lot of simple carbs and sugars and things like that, their microbiome is going to be tilted more toward those types of foods. Someone that eats a lot of fresh vegetables and beans and things like that, their microbiome is going to be skewing more toward bacteria that can break those things down. So, you're feeding the bacteria that are most prolific in your microbiomes are the ones that survive based on the food that you're giving them.
That's a very
And
good, that's a very good point. The bacteria, like, I always remind my patients that, like, we are more of a bacterial colony than a cell colony. They're like outnumber us 1 to 10.
But at least, yeah, we are definitely more DNA of other things than human DNA. And that's always a bizarre thing to think about, but we are mostly not human DNA. We are mostly microorganism DNA. So think about your microbiome. And if you find that, the same thing can happen with food poisoning. I've, had experiences with people, the same people go to a restaurant, have the same exact food, or they go to someone's house and they have the same exact food, only one person gets sick.
The
How's
one
that
who,
possible?
the one who has the lowest stomach acid usually.
Correct. That's exactly right. It's whoever has the lowest stomach acid is the one that's probably going to get food poisoning because they don't have the defense mechanisms. The stomach acid is part of our immune system. It's part of our digestion, but it also helps with in immunity too. It's killing off those bacteria that are coming in our food. So we got to make sure as we age, stomach acid goes down. We got to stoke those fires and keep that stomach acidity up. So yeah, good questions, Roland. Today I'm loving it. All right, superfoods. Yeah, superfoods. There's lots of superfoods out there. What are the best ones? What kinds are there? I don't know. Dr. Baby, you want to kind of
Oh,
tee that one
that's
off?
a very good question. I guess, like, my top foods would be, let's see, blueberries. Like, I usually recommend blueberries almost like, as much as I would recommend a supplement. The other one, if one is able to digest the fats, tahini is amazing. We were actually having a discussion with Dr. Romig the other day,
Yeah.
how much we both love tahini. Like dark greens, I'm a big fan of parsley. And later on, I learned to like cilantro, but I usually like mix parsley and cilantro. Oh, another one,
Mhm.
arugula. Like amazing. It improves your fibers. It's just like, great for triggering production of bile. So it's an amazing one. So there's a bunch of them, but I
There-
guess they're the ones at the top of my head right now.
Yeah, and it really, it just depends on who you ask when you ask it about what their superfoods are. There are so many different superfoods that are in vogue right now. It doesn't mean that the other ones are lesser in their quantity of high antioxidants. And in my opinion, superfoods are usually like high antioxidant foods, things that are going to really boost our immune system. They're going to decrease inflammation. Those are things that are going to be really those superfoods. Yeah.
I gotta add two more things there. Like, speaking
Yeah.
of that, how can I forget? One is the pomegranate. It's amazing. Like, the problem with the pomegranate is if you're having some of the medications, sometimes it can impact the absorption
Yeah.
of those medications. So be aware of that.
Just be
The
aware.
other one is sumac. It has the highest antioxidant capacity, ORAC score, among the herbs. It's an amazing herb. If you have never tried sumac in your life, they're sold as like sumac berries, and this is almost, it looks like little chili peppers, but
Ah.
they have a citrus flavor. They're not spicy, and they could be put on any salads, any dressings, and they are amazing.
Yeah, I learned something on these things too, guys. I've never had sumac.
Okay, well,
All right, I'm gonna
next time
try
that
it.
you're gonna try.
I have something I can add to my list. So there you go. Superfoods are, like I said, they're things that are really high in certain nutrients, phytonutrients that are going to support immune systems, decrease inflammation, those types of things generally. And there's so many of them out there. Yeah.
And I see high histamine foods questions. You know,
Mm.
high histamine is like, when our body is reacting to a lot of things, like, we
Yeah.
usually react more to those. Like when our body is, especially like, not specific for this question, but when our body is reacting to multiple things, think of it as almost like a crying kid that is reacting to even to the chocolate that you're offering. So we got to understand what is triggering our body to create that reaction. So it may not be like specifically to those foods. Maybe we do have some underlying inflammation in the system, some reactions to certain things, and we are reacting to the foods. All the foods have some levels of histamine, but some are higher in histamine. And if we are reacting to that, it's probably some of the processes are still going on inside the body, and we need to calm those processes before the body can handle those properly. I don't know what you want to add there, Dr.
Yeah, I think that sometimes what happens with high histamine foods is they're we wanted to look at the microbiome too and make sure there isn't anything going on like small intestinal fungal overgrowth. So candida and SIFO are both huge contributors to blocking the DAO enzyme. The DAO enzyme is produced in the small intestines typically, and when there is a lot of overgrowth or inflammation in the small intestines, we're going to see a higher incidence of histamine sensitivities. So when you have a diagnosis like EOE, it's you are and it's eosinophilic esophagitis, but so it means the eosinophils in the tissue. Eosinophils are in, their white blood cell that's reacting to inflammation or some sort of bacterial marker. But when eosinophils are high in the tissue, that means that there's some sort of immune response there. And so when I'm looking at someone that has EOE, they have a lot of food sensitivities still. I'm still going to want to, look upstream or downstream a little bit and say, okay, let's run an organic acid test. And this person, I think we've worked together and we've done some testing in the past. So feel free to reach back out to us. But I think doing some sort of organic acid testing could be really beneficial, and seeing if there is something else going on in that microbiome, if there is a candida overgrowth, maybe there's mold exposure. And these are some things that I see, they're very prevalent when there's mold exposure in the home, or if there was prior mold exposure that could be still lingering in the body. These can actually exacerbate histamine responses because that DAO enzyme is being blocked, not to mention genetic factors that might inhibit the DAO enzyme production. So we have to look at all of those factors. So yes, being on a low histamine diet is important. You may want to try supplementation with a DAO enzyme. That's always a good way to go. Doing something like quercetin can certainly help lower the histamine. So I always look at histamine intolerances as like a sink that has a clog in it, right? Some water gets through, but it's slow. So if you've too many histamines in the body all at once, it's going to clog up and it can cause a reaction. So sometimes very small amounts of histamine foods can get through, and with minimal response, like, having any kind of minimal reaction. But if you start loading too much on, then you're going to start to see a problem. I personally have had a lot of experience with histamine sensitivities in my life. I know this area very, very well, and very, and I've actually overcome most of it, but it has taken years of work, and most of it was on my gut. Most of it was working on my gut and getting my inflammation down and keeping quercetin as a supplement daily.
But
Yeah.
like solving the issue, like quercetin and DAO enzyme is great. But then you actually address, I mean, you lower the inflammation naturally, but as you mentioned, if there's like a fungal overgrowth, or there's an imbalance, or is there something that we need to actually solve at the background before it creates that inflammation? It's not only lowering the inflammation or giving the enzyme, but solving what is causing that inflammation is very important.
Exactly. And that's something that, from a functional medicine perspective, we may see the inflammation, but we want to know why it's there. And we're going to try and address the root cause of the inflammation, not just try and, if we keep just trying to put the fire out, but there's something that keeps relighting it. We're going to be, it's an uphill battle. So we have to put out the reason, the thing that keeps lighting the fire. We have to deal with that while we're trying to put the current fire out. So that's kind of that functional medicine. That's that functional medicine approach to healing that we really embrace. So, um, So, I'm going to hit a question about protein, and then I'm very curious about this question about the DCN versus ND approach. That's very interesting. So, we'll do a quick thing on protein. Protein is huge, in my opinion. I think most people should be getting a little bit more protein, especially if they are focusing on a little bit more on a plant-based diet. Most people, I think, don't eat enough protein on plant-based
Yeah.
diets, and I'm constantly like pushing protein because every cell of our body relies on amino acids to
Yeah.
function properly.
I
Um,
usually explain this as like, think of it, the proteins as a necklace and it has bunch of beads. And those beads, when proteins are broken down in the body, they turn into their beads, which are amino acids. Then the body uses those amino acids and then reorganizes them in different ways to make the hormones, to make the enzymes. So we're not eating the protein not to lose our muscles, but for everything from our brain function, for our moods, everything in the body. So protein, like intake of them are super important, but absorption is very important as well. Protein actually needs a lot of good amounts of stomach acid to be absorbed first, and then the enzymes as well. So we need to make sure that we're eating our proteins and absorbing our proteins as well.
yes, that's so critical. Again, stomach acid, it's so much comes back to digestion. Yeah. So the DCN versus ND approach, yeah, this is a good one. Dr. Ava, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, that's actually, I like talking about different approaches of the professionals. So when it comes to functional medicine, which by the way, I love MDs, and if you're working with an MD, that's an awesome way. But MDs or functional medicine doctors look at from more focused on the general wellness perspective. So our starting point is more based on the nutrition. I always explain that when it comes to functional medicine, the bulk of it is in nutrition. So when you talk with a functional medicine practitioner, whether an ND or an MD, they're actually talking mostly on functional nutrition because the functional wellness kind of like flops if there's no nutrition supporting it. So the base, the building base is the nutrition. So this is where we start our approach. So we start by evaluating the nutrients that are in your system. What are some of the things that you need? Like, what are the symptoms that leads to some of the deficiencies, or if there's an imbalances in the system. And we usually go from there, and then when you start from nutrition and digestion and all those aspects, we are actually having a better foundation. But it doesn't necessarily mean that one way is wrong and the other way is right. It's just the different approaches.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, and like Dr. Beba said, it's the naturopath, the naturopathic healing modality has been around for a really, really long time. Not to say that functional medicine hasn't in some form or fashion, but in reality, functional medicine has in the last 20 years really taken hold. But it's based so much on the traditional medicine. So naturopaths, I think, are naturally kind of fall into that functional medicine approach because they are looking at root cause. But naturopaths also are looking they're definitely more on the herbal medicine side, which we also do. Um, so I like Dr. Babe was saying, I don't think that the DCN approach to chronic condition is so different from the naturopathic approach. If the naturopath took time to get that extra training in functional medicine. So, yeah, so just because they're trained as a naturopath does not necessarily mean that they have the functional medicine training, because naturopathy is very much just looking at all the different natural approaches to healing, herbal medicine, some supplements, things like that. So uh, it's holistic, but the functional medicine perspective is very specific. And the DCNs, most DCNs I know have been trained more so on the functional medicine, functional nutrition side. And so and like Dr. Babe was saying, it's very root cause. we're running all the functional medicine testing. We're looking to see all of the different systems and how they're interwoven, the imbalances and things like that.
And one thing actually, each practitioner, whether they're DCN or MD, brings their own backgrounds and their focus areas in the system as well. For example, you can work with other functional nutritionists or DCNs, but at Sage, we're also bring the herbalism aspect through Dr.
Yeah.
Rom approach. So like Dr. Wendy is actually creating amazing herbal protocols for most of our patients. And um, that is why each practitioner brings their strengths into their practices. One of the good things about Sage is we do have multiple practitioners here, and we usually collaborate on our patient histories. So when we have a patient, we usually have team meetings and discuss the protocols and what we should be doing and the tests. So there's a lot of collaboration going on. So our patients are not getting only one nutritionist or one DCN, but multiple DCNs inputs and their backgrounds too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so great question. Question about spirulina. Spirulina, Dr. Baby, do you want to take that one?
Um, I actually like spirulina.
Yeah.
Personally, it's a great. I usually use it for either a detoxifying agent or for energy purposes. I usually I do have a nice amount of cabinet supplements cabinet, and I usually have some spirulina around in that. But then if there's other supplements you're taking with, we usually try to space it out because it can impact the absorption. This is more Dr. Wendy Romig's area, but I just want to chime in.
No, absolutely. So spirulina, I think can be really beneficial. We just have to make sure it's well-sourced spirulina,
Oh yeah.
because of the potential contaminants that can get in there. So we want to get a really good source of spirulina. And there are some ones out there. Just make sure they're organic, make sure that they're well-sourced. The other function of spirulina that I've used it for is also it helps with the chelation, and removing of certain when you get like a mercury toxicity, spirulina can be really beneficial in that helping supporting that chelation process. Spirulina can also be really useful for mold remediation in the body. So it's high in antioxidants. It does have a mild binding agent component to it. So so spirulina can be really good. Would I put it in my smoothie every day? Maybe only if I was going through maybe a detoxification period of a week or so. There's certain things, sometimes I hear people throwing like everything but the kitchen sink into their smoothies because they hear benefits of lion's mane and spirulina and this and that. And I'm just like, well, when we're doing something on every day that has that level of healing properties, we might want to just mix it up, create a rotation, because we can tilt things. So I'm more of a fan of just, okay, let's use spirulina in it with a targeted focus of, okay, I'm going through a detoxification. I have maybe heavy metals, I might have mold and things like that. So
Good points. Good points. It's not definitely something that you should be having every day. If you have energy issues, if you need extra help for detoxification, and if you end up using spirulina, we definitely need to talk. Maybe we need to address other concerns that you're using the spirulina as a band-aid there.
exactly, exactly. So we're up on time. Wow, this half hour just flew by. I can't even believe it. There were such great questions kind of zipping through in the chat today. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We are going to get this uploaded onto YouTube,
Yeah.
and just a little hey, just letting you know that we're working on a podcast. So
Yes.
stay tuned. We will keep you apprised of a podcast that's coming down the pike in the next month or so. And we'll let you know. It's going to be the Sage team, some banter and ask the practitioner type stuff with guest speakers and things coming down. So we'll keep you posted. All of you, again, well, thank you for coming. any of you, if you want to meet with us, just go ahead and jump on our calendar. Feel free. If you haven't met with us before, feel free to schedule a 15-minute free phone consultation. We'd love to hear from you and see what your health goals are. And just stay in touch. Let us know if you have any other questions. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.